And Dominique will second. Catherine, I guess it's up to you.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Warden,
Yes.
Councillor Jaguar,
Yes.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
Councillor Ketchabah.
Yes.
4-0, the motion is carried.
All right. The minutes from the meeting of May the 4th have been circulated, and I assume everyone's had opportunity to peruse them. If there are no errors or omissions,
So moved.
okay, I see Sally moves and Dominique will second. All in favor?
Warden Marks,
Yes.
Councillor Jaguar,
Yes.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
Councillor Ketchabah.
Yes.
4-0, the motion is carried.
Good. Next, we'll move on with reminder of disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. And I don't see any noted. Let's move on with item number 4, which is community grant program request from the Bayham Historic Society. Catherine, if you please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Bayham Historical Society would like the committee to consider whether they would approve them moving their event to later in the fall. I believe that they suggested September as opposed to normally when they host Edison Fest in June. Just considering, I think it is actually usually around the first weekend in June that they host it, which at this point, based on the provincial restrictions, will be impossible. So they have asked the committee if they would consider that.
I have no problem with extending that for them.
Sounds reasonable.
I see heads nodding, so I think there's consensus around this committee that we'd recommend extending, the program. And yes, to confirm, it is usually the first weekend in June, and I agree with you. I can't imagine any events taking place this summer. Toronto's even canceled their CNE for the fall, so it may be optimistic for them to try for then, but I can them for at least being hopeful. So we need a motion then to grant the request. Mover and seconder then. And Sally will second. All in favor?
Warden Marks,
Yes.
Councillor Jaguar,
Yes.
Councillor Martin,
Yes.
Councillor Ketchabah.
Yes.
4-0, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Moving on with item 5 of the agenda, the official plan review. What we heard, report number 1.
Thank you.
Nancy?
No, Mr.
Brian.
Chair, I'm gonna take the. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the committee. In accordance with the county's official plan review public engagement strategy document endorsed by council earlier this year, staff is happy to present before you the first edition of the What We Heard report, which includes a summary of the engagement efforts completed to date, comments consolidated into various topic themes, the provision of some statistical data, and includes actual as we heard it feedback from our community members appended to the report, complete with responses provided by staff. The various reports, once endorsed by the committee and council, will be further made available to the public and posted on the county's official plan website, and its presentation noted via social media to the public as well. The next edition will detail ongoing consultations with LMPs and other agency community stakeholders. Thereafter, discussion reports pertaining to such topics as affordable housing, servicing and development, provincial policy statement changes, and impacts to county policies will be presented to this committee as well as to council, whereby guidance will be sought. At this time, we'd be happy to address any specific inquiries committee members may have. And with that, we have to answer the questions.
I have one right off the bat, Brian, and thank you. The plan to provide the engagement so far report on the website or publicly, does that include the individual comments?
That, yes, that would be the intent, correct.
Okay. We've got some concerns from him on another topic about providing individual comments that weren't necessarily released for public exposure. I'm wondering, is this a problem or a concern?
Through you, Mr.
it
Chair,
something that's
as
been-
part of the,
Yeah, please.
sorry, through you, Mr. Chair, as part of the webpage where people signed up to receive notifications, we did have the disclaimer that their information could be made public, for instance. So that is something that we, I think, include now in all of our web pages and correspondence to ensure that people are aware that their comments could be made public and in public forums and in public documents.
Okay, thank you. That means that we're covered. Thank you. Okay, any questions for Brian regarding the report, the first engagement study? Or comments? Yeah,
For you, Mr. Chair, and let me know if my connection is a little wonky. I can turn off my video. Yeah, I guess an observation, it looks like the demographic is nicely balanced, but I think the location is very Port Stanley or Central Elgin heavy. So I don't know if staff have any comment on, we would expect some more representation because it's more populated. But I don't know if staff have any comments about how to increase the outreach to other parts of the county.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's something that I myself noted and struggle with as well. I think as part of this, as Brian noted, as part of the What We Heard #2 report, some of the recommendations as well for additional public engagement will be recommended. I think there are various strategies that we can try to employ that will also hopefully garner more interest in some other local municipalities where maybe they're underrepresented. And I think those are the discussions and we'll come up with some recommendations as well. We can employ surveys, obviously, but also we're very limited right now with the pandemic. So a lot of our engagement has to be online, which may unfortunately disclude a lot of the population that doesn't necessarily have that internet connection. So we'll have to brainstorm on what might be an appropriate way to try to engage residents that don't have that ability to engage online. So those recommendations, I think, will come out of that.
Through Mr. Chair, to Councillor Giguère, one such tool that we are working on developing as we speak right now and will be releasing very shortly is a platform called Bang the Table. And every best effort will be made to get the word out that that's available. And so we are hoping to increase our engagement and our outreach through that platform and really expand the level of feedback that we get from the community through the use of that platform. So we're really excited to get going on that and stay tuned for more information in that regard in the near future.
Thank you. Sally. You must be muted. Still.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Now we got you.
Sorry, phone was ringing in the background, so I muted it. We use Bang the Table at Central Elgin. It has been excellent. We have a lot of interaction. They can ask questions, get answers, etc. And I think it's a great system. It's really helped us. So I'm glad to see we're doing that. And one thing I'll say, the Central Elgin Port Stanley, our Port Stanley citizens are the most vocal you'll find, I think, almost anywhere. So if anyone's going to take part in the survey, it'll be them.
Good to know. Dominique.
The other thing I would Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I may, the other thing I would note, again, to address Councillor Jaguar's inquiry, staff has certainly amassed through the course of our capital projects, as an example, various contact groups that we will also, again, use a mechanism to communicate the OP review and garner feedback. So we'll be using those means as well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's a
Okay,
good
Tom.
idea. Yeah, I received 2 questions based on the agenda, and I guess the results were already published. So one, I think somebody was noting how many comments were being in some ways deferred to local municipality. So, well, this will not be in the county plan. This would be a local issue. So the question ended up being, so what does the county plan do? So what direction does the county plan provide if it doesn't look after parks and sidewalks and so on, so on? So I thought, okay, I'm actually not sure how to answer that. So I thought I would ask for a professional answer.
I'll defer to Nancy.
Of course you will. So the county official plan is very high level, obviously. It really sets out the structure for a lot of the local municipalities to adopt then their own policies related to certain things. But usually the local municipalities, their official plan will go farther. So it will look at a lot of the more detailed local, what we consider to be local issues. So for instance, water, servicing, things like that are really looked at the local level. And so the structure for that wouldn't be through the county official plan, it would be at the local level. So parks and recreation is another one of those things that's looked at the local levels. It's not provided through the county official plan. What the county official plan does is provide generally the population, the forecasting, the setting out of the settlement areas, for instance, that's done. High level policies related to tourism, related to agriculture, the protection of all of that. The natural heritage is usually coming from the county. So the overall policy framework for reviewing natural heritage or protecting natural heritage, that would be under the county plan. Just high level information about servicing, but really, like I said, the details about that would all be at the local municipal level. Generally, like I said, it's more of a high level document. So a lot of those details, like specific questions about certain things, Port Stanley was a big one, for instance, that came out, and that would be looked at through the local municipal official plan, more so when it comes to specifics.
If I, Mr. Chair, if I may build upon that, I think your question is a good question, and certainly based on the feedback that we've heard, I think staff will endeavor to provide some clarification in that regard.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? To be honest, I'm just back here when a lot of the questions or answers or comments from staff were referring things back to the local municipality. To me, again, it was a case of perhaps a misunderstanding of the population of the various areas of jurisdiction. We've seen it before, and I see it again here. I thought, well, it's just one of those things that we have to deal with along the way. But it was kind of interesting. I thought the results throughout, the survey, and in fact, I was just trying to find the one where it talked about why or what people think, what's desirable about Elgin County itself, and I thought that was a very interesting result that you received there. The rural place to live. It was, environmentally conscious. But about fourth on the ranking, I thought was interesting when they suggested that municipal services or community services was high on their importance lists, and I thought it was interesting that was noted. So that was my 2 cents. Dominique, you had a follow-up comment or question.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I have 2 more comments actually. So one question was, or maybe it was a concern or a question. why, I think there's a reference to the erosion issues and why it seemed to indicate that that would be treated separately, where I guess the constituent seemed to think that had to do with planning and managing hazard lands. So wanted to some clarification on that. What, I guess, why would be separate and what would that look like?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that came up, and as well, you'll see it'll come up through the stakeholder discussions as well with our discussions with Lancelot. Erosion along Lake Erie is a obvious concern. And at this time, there is no easy solution. As you know, there was the shoreline management plan that has not been adopted by the county. There is certain requirements through the conservation authorities, as well as, so you can't disentangle the two because there is that process that's still ongoing. Our official plan, in fact, doesn't really, other than protections on hazard, it doesn't really discuss much else. It is a large, really what it comes down to is it is a bigger issue than I think that can be dealt with through the scope of something like an official plan review. I think it takes more time. It would take more consultation. It would have to be involved with multiple agencies rather than just the county. So there's no, and like I said, there's no easy solution at this point. So as part of what we heard, number 2, for instance, I think some of those additional policy review pieces that likely can't be done because of their scope through the official plan review, but will be need to be looked at, will be noted for council as well to determine, in the future, should staff, should we decide to look at this review, because we'll need some funding potentially for things like that. There might need to be budget. There might need to be a lot of considerations for these types of projects, and so basically, I hate to not touch on it, but at the same time recognizing that there are limitations to our own staff and what we can do through this type of a process. So.
Sally?
Yeah, I just comment that I was very interested to see the number of things people strongly or agreed with. That it, some very clear messages from those that you had in, so there's a fair amount of consensus on many of the issues.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we got most of it. You cut out there for a little bit, but I think the message that you had, Sally, was something along the line of a strong consensus on various issues there.
Yes.
Did I catch that?
Yes.
Not. Thank you. Okay. Perfect. Questions? Dominic?
Thank you, if I may, Mr. Chair. So the other comment slash question I had was where is the part that we don't know what we don't know in terms of asking for input, and where would that come from in the process? So in terms of communities of the future and driverless vehicles, and what's the impact on planning for aging in place, and so all of that, ways of developing communities that perhaps don't look like today, but would have an impact 20 years from now. So where would that intelligence come from, and when in the process, if it will be considered?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, as we know, the official plan is an evolving document. It's certainly not going to be static. We're required through the province to review every 5 years, which is, I think at the time, that's a good temperature gauge to see what's going on, what can we reasonably include, or how has the community changed, and then try to reflect that in our own policies. So all I would say at this point is that although these sorts of things are not necessarily on Elgin County's horizon in the immediate 5-year future, so I would say even though this plan plans to 2031, 2051, like I said, every 5 years we'll be reviewing that for what's that next thing that we need to be looking at? What is that? What sort of policies do we need to incorporate to ensure that the development of the future can be developed? Those sorts of things. So at this time, those sorts of things are not in this current, or not being considered currently, but I can see that in the future they will be. So I would offer that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, building upon that as well, the County Transportation Master Plan plays a pivotal supporting document in supporting this official plan. And as part of that study effort, we will be looking at various technologies along the way and you know, transit strategies, so on and so forth. So it begins to build that framework with respect to, you know, communities of future that I think you're referring to, and we're excited with respect to what will come out of that process as well. So.
Okay, Nancy and or Brian, would not the OP be a place to suggest a mix of residential types? You know, whether it be multi-res, whether it be not-for-profit, or you know what I mean, geared to income housing, whether it be town housing, probably an encouragement for intensification, you know, and that kind of stuff. So in that light, then I do see the OP speaking a little towards the future. But I agree with you. I think the thing will evolve over time. And I think Sally and Tom, if I've got it correct, your official plan does address or does suggest building mixes for density development.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
That's something that is happening in Port Stanley too.
Mm-hmm.
Como
Yeah.
will have 4 buildings, and landings will have 1 as well as
Okay.
row houses.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, as well, our current policies do also encourage that mix of
Right.
housing types. Again, it's very high level though, so it allows for the municipalities to, but I believe it's 20% is a certain target for affordable housing. And there are some parameters with respect to affordable housing in our current official plan, but based on the fact that there has been the the St. Thomas Elgin housing affordability study that was done a year or 2 ago, I believe. Certainly we'll be looking at that through that affordable housing discussion paper. What are the recommendations coming from something like that? Is there anything we can incorporate into our official plan to ensure that there's that mix of uses, mix of affordability, all of those components? So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Sally.
Central Elgin did, we had a special report on how to give incentives to developers, et cetera, to do affordable housing, and that we haven't made any final adoption. Sorry, I'm sure I'm freezing again. I'll turn my video off and see if that helps. The Central Elgin have done a study, a special study, and recommendations were brought to us as to ways we could encourage developers to, you know, build affordable housing, what we could do as a municipality. We have never officially adopted any specific plans because COVID sort of interfered. And but if you wanted to contact Paul Shipway, he can probably provide you with that report.
Certainly.
It might be good for the other municipalities to know as well.
Thank you. Is there anything further from committee members? Well, again, I think it's an interesting first read or report on what we've heard so far. Again, if you were to read all the comments, I think you'd be up all night. It's a fairly long document. I'll be honest with you, I perused some, but I was more interested in the tallies for each of the individual questions. So, but I did pay attention to some of them. Okay. Do we need a motion to receive the report?
Mr. Chairman,
Tom?
if I could, I
Please.
think probably before we leave this, one thing that really struck me, and it's a perfect example today, how much this committee right today is struggling with internet. And
Yeah.
we are used to this and prepare as much as we can to overcome our things. Think of the people that, you know, think they have good internet and try to do this, because we're a year ahead of them. But broadband is still a huge obstacle.
Yes.
Just noting that. And I think there's a lot of people there either know it or maybe not even aware of it yet, but it's an impediment to development for sure in many ways.
Certainly. Okay, final call. Anything more on this particular topic? Okay, then I'd entertain a motion to receive the report.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Could we receive the report and direct that staff present it to County Council?
sounds good to me.
Thank you.
I'm happy to move that.
Thank you, Sally. Dominique will second.
Warden Marks,
Yes,
Councillor Jaguar,
Yes,
Councillor Martin,
Yes,
Councillor Ketchabah.
Yes,
4-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Moving on to committee composition update, an outreach to the Elgin Federation of Agriculture.
I can provide an update through you, Mr. Chair. I
Mhm.
reached out to the EFA and they had indicated that May is their busiest time right now. So they are not actually meeting until June to discuss the potential to provide a candidate for the committee. So I've indicated that as long as they keep in touch, and they will obviously at their June meeting discuss the ability to provide a member, one of their members on the committee. And so we'll have to wait until June until they're available and meeting again.
Okay, that's fair. In addition, I'll inform the committee, I had a conversation with Fonz Vanbroek. He's a past president, and I'm not sure he's a current president or not. But Fonz was asking about the appointment as well. Fonz is also clarifying that the Federation has lots of time to provide additional comments. Yes, we did. So they are engaged, but yes, May is typically the busy month. They do not meet. So if the committee is patient, we can wait till June to hear back from them. Good. You don't need a motion or anything to receive that report, do you? Good. Is there any correspondence to share today, Catherine?
No,
Thank you. So do we set a date for the next meeting? Are we looking at June? Are we looking at July? Late June if we want to hear back from the Federation?
perhaps June 22nd in the afternoon after council.
So far, I think that will work for me. Although why don't we go with that
Yeah.
date after council?
what was the planned timing of the next report, the next survey or the next set of input?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we had indicated June 1st, but we have EFA, we're going to be meeting with the local municipalities as well before. So we recognize that those things need to happen too before we finish that, finalize that, what we heard number 2. So certainly June 22nd seems to work from our perspective, so we can have something for that committee to review.
Okay, just want to make sure you have enough
Okay.
time.
Right. So shall we tentatively then book the 22nd?
yeah, it's fine with me.
All right then. I'll write it down before I forget. All right, is there anything else before the committee today? Well, good. Tractor's calling. So
Move
with that,
adjournment.
I
Move adjournment.
thank you, Tom. Seconder to adjourn? Well, okay.
Warden Marks,
Yes.
Counselor Jiguer,
Yes.
Counselor Martin,
Yes.
Counselor Ketchabah.
Yes,
4-0, the motion is carried.
perfect. Everyone enjoy the day and thank you for participating. Tom, I didn't get it in 20 minutes, but we're pretty close.
Put those, plant those seeds right side up.